We tend to live in the world as we see it today, and we know about the large numbers of people and so on. But I think it's worth to have this historical perspective. So during nearly all of human evolutionary history, that's about 200,000 years, maybe 100,000 in our kind of more current form, as it were. During all of that period, there's been about half a billion to 1 billion people living on the planet. That's been right up to the early 1800s. In fact, the WHO reckon in 1804 was the first time there were 1 billion people on the planet. Today there are 8 billion people on the planet. So we've gone from 1 billion to 8 billion. Of course we're impacting the world. All of the waste that we produce, all of the resources that we need, all of the energy that we consume, distributed over the whole planet, and building our cities and urban environments and what have you, of course we're having a massive impact on the planet. We didn't seem to be really quite aware of the extent of the damage that we're doing. And if you look forward just another 30, 40 years, there'll be an extra 2 billion people on the planet joining us with current projections. So 10 billion people on the planet. If that's the kind of change that's taken place over the last 300 or 400 years, how on earth are we going to manage with this large population on the planet and live successfully with the rest of nature? And that really is the fundamental challenge that the European Centre is addressing. Again, it comes back to this last 300 years, really, because prior to that, then people were incredibly aware of nature. They were aware of the seasons, because you didn't have the same kind of sealed environment that we have in our homes these days. You know, you're in contact with nature. You had to obtain your food and that was influenced by season. So you're aware of nature for that sort of thing. In terms of transport, prior to 300 years ago, I mean, it was quite a job to get from one place to another, so you were walking through nature, or at least perhaps travelling on horseback or on a carriage or some such thing. So yeah, I think with the Industrial Revolution and the advent of new forms of transport and building more conventional, or at least conventional in the modern sense, homes, then people have gradually become isolated. So I definitely think that for most of us, that loss of contact with nature is detrimental. And we know that one of the biggest problems, medical problems on the planet, and by 2030 it will be the biggest problem, are mental health difficulties. And the other great epidemic we have, as well as mental health problems and the pandemic, is obesity. And you could regard obesity as being a kind of a disruption of our natural balance, one way or another, so a sort of mental perturbance that causes us to eat more than we know is good for us. So I think these are signs that we're not in a very comfortable place. Many people are not in a comfortable place, demonstrably. And nature helps us to find that comfortable place, or has done in the past. Initially, when you said that nature is good for people's health and well-being, quite often the response from the Department of Health and ministers in different fields, the environment field or whatever, was that, well, what's the evidence? It's all anecdotal, there's small studies. So one of the things the Centre has ignited is, or contributed to igniting, I should say, is performing detailed, high-quality, reproducible studies with large numbers of people to try and get the data. And we've published a lot of that. In fact, the Centre's been very productive in terms of high-quality scientific papers. And but we've packaged it up, this information, and we've had great conversations with some really helpful and encouraging people in DEFRA and in some of the other government departments, and eventually in the Cabinet Office. And they said, well, can you pull all this lot together and we'll see what it looks like. So we did a major review. Dr. Rebecca Lovell led that work, and what it produced was a weight of evidence that spending time in nature is positive for health and well-being. We don't know all the mechanisms involved. We don't quite know how it works. You know, what is it that what are the cues and clues you pick up from nature, as I often say? Is it what you see? Is it what you smell? Is it what you hear? What you touch? Is it all of it together? Do they all need to be there? We don't really quite know. But in terms of psychological assessments and physical well-being assessments, we know you drop your blood pressure if you're in nature, and you feel better, and you get mentally restored if you've been stressed. So we know that's true. So the government took this on board, and it's now incorporated in the government's 25-year plan for the environment. So there was a kind of a big win. And with the World Health Organization and United Nations Environment Programme, we've also had a strong influence there. What I hope for is that environment and human health generally is now a thing. I mean, it's embedded. If there were a word that we could create for environment and human health together, I would create that word, but I don't know what it is. But I would like it to be thought of as one thing. Actually, I was in Australia doing some work down there a couple of years back, and the Aborigines do have words for this. They don't separate people from nature. They just don't. It's all one thing to them. And I thought that was such a pertinent and relevant concept that I just hope environment and health as a field, as a meta-discipline, will be viewed in that way long off into the future.